Yeah.
What am I don't like this. I got headphones
this is great.
on.
It's
this is like
mouth noises.
bad ASMR.
The deli guy, he pushes a raisin into some goo, and it makes that noise. And I'm like, they know what they're doing. There's some craftsmen behind this film. At least in the sound effects department, because
I was gonna say when you said it never reaches the highs of the opening scene again, like you're not going to when the opening scene has a baby being shoved into a microwave.
It's time to ham up.
Oh, I gotta really try hard.
Shut it down! Somehow it's the best.
After the credits.
A YumChunks podcast.
YumChunks!
You want some nuts? Let's have some nuts. That's the line, right?
That's not how it, Sean. That's not.
That's it. That's what he says in the movie.
I want some macadamia nuts. Ryan, what kind of
Cashews.
nuts do you want?
Cashews,
Chewy wants
hazelnuts,
cashews.
also known as noisettes in French.
Ooh, that's where they get that Nutella flavoring from.
From France, yes.
From France. And Michael Keaton.
I want spaghetti.
You want spaghetti? Let's get spaghetti.
Matt, spaghetti isn't a nut, it's a legume.
Pea is neither a nut nor a pea. I said that backwards. You get the idea. But in this universe, it is not backwards. It's forwards. In this universe where we talk about The Flash on episode 121 After the Credits, the YumChunks podcast. The Flash is here, everyone.
Where?
In the past.
Is it the actual Flash or is it Ezra Miller? Because otherwise, if so, we should probably I don't know. We should run and hide.
We'll bleep out Ezra Miller anytime we mention their name in this episode.
Head your kids, as your wives. Ezra Miller's on the loose.
Yeah, we're talking Flash. Who knows how that's going to go? And it's going to be fun, crazy, disappointing, exhilarating. None of the above. But we'll find out. Stay tuned, listeners. As get through these chunks. Because you know what that means. You know what time it is, I mean. I don't know what that means. But it's Chunkfire time. We're going to put our fingers together to make lightning. And then set a blaze.
Let's complete the circuit.
These aren't working for me, Sean.
I mean, I don't know. By these, you're implying that I'm saying something of sense. There's nothing of the sort here. I'm just wildly referencing things. That sounds like a movie.
Made it work. Okay, now it works for me. All right.
Brought it back around. All right, well, let's dive into
board.
chunks then. Yeah. We've had a good week to fill our chunk chambers. What do we fill it with, Chewy? What do you got in store?
Hey, I'm here. I'm excited to talk about this movie tonight. This tale of Mom's Spaghetti. It's a simple,
sweaty.
It's a classic story. All right. Okay. So I saw 2 live shows this week. A few days ago, I saw Earth, Wind, and Fire down at the Rady Symphony Concert Show in downtown San Diego, which is right next to the convention center where they host Comic-Con, where the 3 of us have spent many a times, including the year where we waited for hours to get into the Legend of Korra panel and then didn't get in. So that I remember distinctly that park where they extended the park and they built the shelf. That is where the line for that panel was extending out to, and I remember going all the way down to that park and going through like near the crab restaurant and everything, and then making it like right to the door and not getting into the panel. So, the year after that, we ended up sleeping overnight on the street. Good life choices.
That's funny. Like, no context. Those 2 things seem like non sequiturs. We didn't get into the Avatar panel,
and we gave up on life.
There's nothing else. Yeah, exactly. So that was my first time going to that venue, which is cool. It's a very nice venue. It's great because when it gets dark, you see the ocean on one side, and on the other side you see the skyline. It's like perfectly designed. It's great acoustics. Earth, Wind, and Fire, this was my second time seeing them. They always put on a great show. But this one was particularly fun because the last time I saw them, it was a casino show, and like we were by far the youngest people there. I guess that's just casino shows. I guess, everybody at the first time was all white-haired. But this one, it's outside, there's lawn, people are dancing, all ages, it's great. That completely different energy. Yeah, that was a great time. And then while we were there, we were looking through the program of, the season, and saw that Cake was playing 2 days later. So Maeve and I went back to the Shell last night, actually, with the same group of friends, and saw Cake perform. And Maeve in particular is a big Cake fan. Really holds that music near and dear to her heart, and so I've listened to a lot of it via we're driving around and she puts it on in the car. And yeah, they did a great show too. Completely different vibe, completely just laid back. Really good time. I've got a summer of seeing shows and working shows lined up. So we're off to a good start. Those plus Janet Jackson a couple weeks ago, whenever that was, feeling it. So, and then I'm playing a couple games. I've picked out my summer games. The first one is Spider-Man Miles Morales. Picked it up for PS4. Finally getting around to that. I don't have as much time to dedicate to open world games anymore because they're so long and they're so addictive. Especially the Spider-Man games. Like once I was a couple hours in, I'm like, oh god, this is going to be I better finish this before the summer's over. But yeah, it'd been a while since I played the first one, so it feels new again, which is good, and I'm having a good time with it. And the other game, now before any of you cancel me, I got this game as a gift, and it was
we've canceled you far before this.
Okay, for other reasons. I got this game as a gift, and it was before any allegations came out, and that is High on Life. I'm playing that on Steam. That's the Squanch Games Justin Roiland game where it's a first-person shooter, and it's basically just Rick and Morty. It's first-person shooter. The gimmick is that the guns are all alien creatures who talk to you. One of them is just Morty. Like, the first gun you get, it's the same voice, it's the same character, it's the same personality. But as you go, and you play a space bounty hunter, and you're trying to find all these like crime drug lords and assassinate them, and every time you do, you pick up a new gun. It's fun. It has it reminds me of old school like single player campaign FPSs. There's some puzzle stuff, there's some Metroidvania elements, there's some Half-Life-y type of stuff in there. And it's really fun, colorful, pretty looking game. So I haven't played an FPS in a while. Like a long time. It's a genre I just kind of stopped playing. So I've heard this one's not too long, and it's really fun so far. So I'm going through that, and that is what those things are basically all I've been up to, over the last week and a half or so. So now at this point, I will pass the stick on over to Ryan. Ryan, go ahead and unload.
Well, I don't actually have any chunks to share, but I also beat High on Life a while back when it first came out. I guess I didn't mention it on the podcast, but I enjoyed it for the most part. It wasn't the best part was just kind of the guns talking to you. That was kind of just a fun thing.
You really gotta like Rick and Morty, I feel like.
Yeah, it's a soft recommend, I guess. But I mean, Justin Roiland left the studio, so I don't know if that helps your conscience at all. I mean, he was all charges against him were dropped, but we don't. I mean,
we don't need to get into that. But either way, it's a moot point because I didn't pay any money for it, so I'm good. It's fine. But yeah, I feel like you really gotta like his type of humor and that stuff to be like, otherwise this game is going to get old really fast. So I would agree with the soft recommend.
Yeah. But that's all I got.
That's it?
That's
my
it.
gosh.
All I've been doing is thinking about High on Life. I didn't actually do anything. So I'm glad you brought it up, so I had something to contribute.
You've only been doing that for the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
On to Sean.
Well, also Miles Morales. I've played that. That game's great, but also somewhat appropriate. Spider-Man 2 comes out this year, the sequel to that, and the original the Spider-Man. And it's got a lot of hype, and I'm excited for it. And it was featured in Across the Spider-Verse.
I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Except for it's not going to be on PS4, and I'm not planning on buying a PS5 anytime soon. So if they release a PS5 Slim, like they've done with every other PlayStation, I will wait till that's on sale, and then I'll get the PS5. And
if they could even keep the PS5s around long enough to make different versions of it.
See, that's what I did with the PS4. That's what I've done with pretty much all the PlayStations. I wait till the Slim comes out, and then I wait even longer. and then by then, there's all the games that I'll ever have wanted to play on it is out. So, it's good. It's fine. I've got enough games.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, there's enough games. Stop making games, everyone.
Like, I don't have enough time. I won't.
Not really. You can keep making games. We'll allow it for now.
It's your job.
It is your job.
Your job.
It's my... Yeah, sorry. Well, I've been trying to bring him down from the inside. But I'm glad they kept making games, because I'm still playing Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So there's that, and I could go into more detail, but since that's all I've been doing this last week, I haven't really had a lot of new things to add to Chunkfire, so I'll take this opportunity to talk about my Japan trip that I went on earlier this year, about a month ago, 6 weeks ago. I think I mentioned a couple times, in different contexts on some episodes here, but yeah, I went on a trip to Japan. So come along with me, listeners, and I'll give you a tour of Japan, Sean style.
I'm gonna stay right here.
Na 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 na. Here we go to Japan. Na 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 na. So yeah, I traveled with friend of the show and just friend Sam Stovald. His brother Jack lives in Japan, and he was planning a trip, so we just kind of coordinated. So we traveled a bit together, but I also was out there visiting other friends. But we were in Osaka, went to Osaka. Generally was western part of Japan where I traveled to. Osaka and Fukuoka, which is in Kyushu, which is one of the main islands, the far western southern island. And then Kumamoto I spent some time in Kumamoto. We were in Kyoto for about a day or so, and then a couple days in Tokyo. So kind of a multi-city tour. And I love it. I love Japan. I love everything about it. It's great. Food, friends, fun. Well, okay, I won't. I'm trying to think of another F word. Nothing works. Fukuoka. There we go. Food, fun, friends, Fukuoka.
What's that word?
That's the city that I was in.
Oh, right.
It's a city.
Okay.
It's like the third biggest city in Japan. It's not as famous as Kyoto or something, but it's population-wise pretty large. Anyways, so I won't go into minute detail of my day by day, but a couple of highlights. The first weekend, Sam and I went to Nintendo Universal Japan. And we went to Nintendo World at Universal Japan. Universal Japan was just awesome as a theme park. It was very similar to Universal Hollywood in a lot of ways. They had Hogwarts, Harry Potter World, which was almost identical to the one in Hollywood. They had a lot of the same rides throughout the park. They have a whole land there that is Amity Island. So like the island from the town from Jaws is like a whole world, like a whole land in Japan.
But isn't that just a coastal American town?
Yeah, pretty much, but it's just like a storefront. They have like little shops and stores. And we went on the Jaws ride, which is like a Jungle Cruise style ride, where it's just like on a tour boat, and they give you a tour of like Amityville or whatever. Or not Amityville, but Amity Island. And it's just pretty funny because it was obviously in Japanese, and we don't speak Japanese, at least not in any real way. So it was just great, just like being on this tour, this jokey Jungle Booky kind of tour where she's shooting fake shotgun and explosions are happening in the water, and the Jaws, mechanical thing is popping up everywhere, and it was great. It was a lot of fun.
I'm
they had
really.
a lot of, yeah.
I was gonna say I'm really glad that you rode that because it doesn't exist anywhere else now. They
Oh, yeah?
They demolished it
Yeah.
in Florida to build Diagon Alley.
Oh, well, yeah, it was a hoot. Definitely recommend if you go to Universal Japan. They had a couple other. They had some cool roller coasters there. We went on the Flying Dinosaur, which was awesome. Honestly, one of the best roller coasters I've been on. It was great. That was like the first thing we did. And then a lot of the other kind of I don't know what else they had.
Do you Spider-Man?
A couple other roller coasters. We did Spider-Man. Spider-Man was great. Was like the classic kind of comic booky cartoon kind of like 4D ride kind of thing.
Yeah, that's Ryan and I. We've been on that. We saw it break.
Yeah.
In Florida.
Oh.
If you ever have the chance to go on one of those 4D rides when it breaks, you should do that. I don't know how you could choose, but
there's the scene in that ride where you're like going up the building, and then like the last bit of the ride turns into the motion simulator. Like our car wasn't facing the right direction, and so like we saw how the effect worked. Like there are physical building walls that slide, but they slide in a direction that made us feel like we were going up sideways. Like I can't even
describe. That sounds awesome.
The whole time, like a good half an hour after that, Ryan and I were talking about just how it broke our brains.
Yeah, it was so awesome.
Well, unfortunately, we didn't get in any broken rides, though we did wait in line for over an hour on this roller coaster that was just a weird, funny, unique experience in Japan, where we happened to kind of like get in line right where the ride was kind of having problems. So they were kind of announcing it over the loudspeaker, but it was in Japanese, so we didn't understand. But we could tell like the line wasn't moving, and every time there was an announcement, we looked around to see if other people were reacting, to see like, we should get out of line. But they were not. No one was doing anything. And so we're like, well, I guess it's fine. We'll keep standing here. And we happened to be at this place in line where like you couldn't see, like it was kind of a stairwell. So you couldn't really see behind you past a couple feet, and you couldn't see how close you were. So we're like in this weird little micro bubble of like people of not moving for like over an hour, and we don't know and they're making announcements, but no one is reacting. And we finally just like, this is ridiculous. And we saw a couple other like, tourists, foreigners, like British people or Americans, whoever, get out of the line. They're like, yeah, we don't know what's going on. So finally we got out of the line. And there had like right behind us, like just around the corner where we couldn't see, there was no line. Everyone had got out of line at that point, but I guess were just close enough that people wanted to stay, but they weren't reacting to the announcements. Part of us were like, is it just like the Japanese demeanor, or people being polite, or people not, like just that they're not reacting at all? And it was just really weird. And it was raining too, so we had been like rained on a little bit while we were waiting in line. It was just like this really like, what is happening right now?
What ride was it?
It was the Hollywood Back Coaster, Hollywood Dreamin' Coaster.
Was it like Space Fantasy the ride?
No, I don't know what that is. We didn't do the Space Fantasy.
I'm looking at the attractions page on the Universal Japan website right now.
It was Hollywood. It was a Hollywood coaster. I think it was Hollywood Dream.
Oh, Hollywood Dream. I see. Okay.
Yes, Hollywood Dream. Yeah. It was kind of confusing, but there's like two roller coasters there, and they have the same line. We never could figure out what that even was. Like at some point you choose which roller coaster you want to go on, but we never chose, and I don't know. It was kind of confusing. But anyways, I'm not. That's all great, but the highlight obviously was Nintendo Land. We went to Nintendo Land, and it was amazing. And it was awesome. It was super. It was just great. It was fantastic. It was the highlight for sure the day, and definitely one of the highlights of the trip. We got the wristbands too, so we got all the little interactives. And it's just pleasant. It's just beautiful when you're in there. They do a great job with the sight lines, where it's not a huge area, but it feels like you're surrounded, like you're in a Mario level, like in Mario World. All the little hills and the clouds and the coins and Koopas just everywhere you look. There's only really two rides. One of them is the Mario Kart ride, 4D kind of thing. And that ride is fun, but it's a lot. It's kind of overwhelming. Like, you kind of need to ride it twice to get a sense of it, but the line is really long. So we only rode it once. I was lucky that I had already been to Nintendo Hollywood, so I had already ridden it there. So I had a better sense of riding it in Japan, but still, it's crazy. You have like this visor on top of you dark ride going through, and it's turning, and you have to kind of steer to match the turns, and you're shooting Koopa shells at bad guys and other racers, but they're only showing up on your visor, not like on screens in the world. It's just crazy. It's a lot going on, but it's fun. And then the other ride is kind of, and this is I think unique to Universal Japan. It's a kind of a dark ride, Yoshi's Island something. It's a Yoshi themed ride.
The Yoshi Adventure.
And Yoshi's Adventure. And honestly, that line was longer than the Mario Kart ride for whatever reason, for us anyway. But we're like, well, we're here, we got to go on it. It's a kid's ride, obviously, but we're like, oh, it's going to be a cool Mario-themed dark ride. Like, that's fun, right? That's going to be cool. But it was actually really disappointing. You could basically see 80% of the ride just, like, outside, standing around in Mario, because it kind of goes around the edge of the land, and you basically could see everything it's doing. There's one little section that kind of goes through a little tunnel.
Yeah, it's like the people mover that Disneyland used to have. It's basically just, here's a tour of Nintendo Land.
Basically.
But
I would barely even call it a tour, but yes.
I'm glad that you wrote it because, California doesn't have it, and they're not going to get it.
Yes, and it's not a great loss. That's not a great loss, but I am glad I wrote it. So
Florida's getting it. They're building that whole new park there.
Good for them, I guess. The other thing, though, is there's an actual third attraction, and this is like a secret attraction. And honestly, this was one of the highlights of the land because it was kind of a surprise. And it's also like this weird thing where it's like, what? This cannot work. They're like their marketers, their business, their legal are probably were just like having a tantrum about how this works because there's little activities you could do around the park where when you do the activity, it unlocks a little key on your profile, like if you have the wristband and stuff. And the little activities are like, 10, 15-minute little waits, but it's like you hit something in time with something else, or you get a little fire flower power up like a touch screen where you're like touching Goombas to shoot Goombas, or there's a little puzzle ba-bomb thing. There's like cool little unique little mini activities you do throughout the park. And if you do enough of them, you get keys. And if you collect 3 keys, I think, 3 or 5 or something, 3 keys, and only if you collect 3 keys on your profile will you be allowed to enter this third attraction, which is like Bowser Jr.'s Challenge, or I forgot what it's called, something like that. And I won't spoil anything because part of the fun was like not knowing what we were doing, but it was awesome. It was super cool. But the idea of an entire attraction at a theme park, at a major theme park, and not allowing the general audience in unless they like do a quest in a theme like that, to me just feels
that's
like
awesome.
It was so cool to feel like it felt like more than Star Wars Land, more than Harry Potter Land. It felt like, I'm interacting and doing little things that actually had a significant, like, felt good payoff and that is in Hollywood. So if people go to the Hollywood version, do that activity, like do that little side quest activity and stuff to get that third attraction, because I thought it was great. I thought it was super fun and a great surprise and great. But yeah, the theme park, and there's just like lots throughout the whole world land. There's like little question mark blocks that if you go bump, you'll make the little coin sound and you get coins on your profile, on your little account. Or there's little music blocks that bump and you can play them in order and it plays a classic Mario song. There's little secret panels around the world that show little pixel arty versions of Mario and stuff. And then another highlight was the Toad Cafe, or the Kinopio Cafe. Kinopio is, Toad in Japan, it's Japanese. But it was just beautiful. The food was delicious, but it was so like immaculate, and like all of the windows were video screens of like Toads cooking and Toads out on Mushroom Kingdom doing things. And I don't know, it sounds silly, but it was just like a really fun experience. It was big enough that it didn't feel cramped, and it felt like you were able to relax, and all the food was just, Mario themed to an extent, but like they did such a great job with the presentation. I ordered like pasta carbonara, but it had like a Yoshi egg on it that was just like a egg, like a fried egg or whatever, but it like looked like a Yoshi egg, and there was mushrooms. Sam ordered like a bowl of soup, which was like a mushroom soup that looked like a mushroom. The top came off and there was soup inside. And then he ordered like a pizza bowl as well that was also kind of like, I think maybe it was a Koopa shell shaped.
Huh.
And you got and then we got dessert, which was like a question mark block. It was tiramisu. Yeah, it's just like, I don't know. It was just like a really awesome experience. And also there was, they do a ticketing system where we showed up like to get the ticket for one. And so we didn't have to wait at all when we came back at our time. Overall it was crowded, but it was not like detrimentally crowded. Like I said, we maybe waited 40 minutes for the Yoshi ride, 40 minutes for the Mario Kart ride. And that was the longest we had to wait for anything there. It was just a blast. Super fun. Really, really great. Definitely recommend it. And the one in Hollywood is also pretty much the same thing. It's a little smaller than the one in Japan, but it has all the features for the most part that the one in Japan does. So it was great. It was super fun.
Sounds exactly like Evermore.
Yeah, I'm sure it's exactly like Evermore.
Same production value, same everything. There's so many other little small things that I can mention, but overall, yeah, it was great. And again, that was just like part of the day at Universal. We went on and did a lot of other stuff too.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm going
cool.
to the Hollywood one at the end of July, and I'm probably going to buy an annual pass because I haven't had a theme park annual pass in a while, which is unlike me. But we're taking some family from Ireland there, and they haven't seen any of it, so if all the Nintendo stuff is super busy and they don't want to eat their whole day up waiting for that stuff, then I'll be able to come back. So, Ryan, have you done the Nintendo stuff?
No, I have not.
Well, I will have a pass soon-ish, so, then...
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Maybe we can go check it out. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Definitely recommend. But anyways, that's just one thing I did in Japan.
One thing.
So I won't go into as much detail for everything else. But also when we were in Osaka, Universal Japan is in the city of Osaka. And Osaka was great. We had a couple, went into a couple little bars. There was live jazz music playing the first night we got there and had drinks. It was awesome. So many just great restaurants and little izakayas and just like everywhere you go, the food is ridiculously amazing. Like everything is amazing. The hotel we stayed at in Osaka they had raptors that are the receptionists, like dinosaurs.
What?
There's no humans. It was raptors. They were automated robot raptors who are at the reception desk that check you in and give you your room key and everything. I'm not kidding. Look it up. It's called the Hen Na Hotel in Osaka. I think it's a chain, but it was awesome, and we have some pictures. But it was fantastic. What else? That was just in Osaka. Fukuoka was great. I went and did some tours. I went to Fukuoka Tower, which is a really tall tower, kind of beautiful Fukuoka. Went around a lot of restaurants there. Went to a couple shrines in Kumamoto. I spent like 5-6 days in Kumamoto, and Kumamoto is beautiful. It's a little more rural. It's still a city, but it's a little less, urban and metropolitan than like Tokyo and stuff. And my friend who I stayed with, they live just outside the city, like kind of in the mountains. And so they had this house, and it's beautiful. They had it built just last year. They just moved in, and it's like on a mountainside in Japan, overlooking like this beautiful view of the countryside. And it kind of feels like, if you're going up to Idlewild, like you guys have been to Idlewild, right?
Yeah.
Like, obviously, that kind of like feel like you're on that you're on the mountain there, right? But imagine that, but it's only like 15 minutes away from San Diego or LA or whatever, right? That's kind of the feel, is like you're kind of going up this mountain. But in Kumamoto, it was awesome. Went to a Japanese soccer game. I went to castle, the Kumamoto Castle, which is like the oldest freestanding, like still standing, Japanese castle. Although I think it's kind of one of those Castle of Theseus situations where it's probably been rebuilt over the years. That I don't know if any of it's still actually the authentic original stuff. But it was awesome. It's huge and it's really cool. And again, more food. Went to a couple onsens, which are, Japanese like spring, spa spring kind of things. We went on a couple hikes, went to this volcano, like the summit of a volcano, the caldera, in this national park. And it was beautiful. I saw my friends had multiple centipedes in their house. That was a thing. Yes. So the first night I get there, my friend showed me around his house, and it's great. And he's like, "Oh, by the way, this isn't going to happen, but just in case, I want to let you know, if you see a centipede, just let us know and we'll come and get a grabber and get it out of there. Don't approach them. They'll bite and it's really, really painful and you do not want that to happen. It's not going to happen, but just in case. So then we're hanging out that night and then he's in the bathroom and he says to his wife, "Babe, can you get the grabber?"
Oh, no.
There's a centipede in the bathroom with them. And it's like, yeah, and they're big suckers. I mean, you've probably seen pictures of centipedes. But it's like, oh, geez, that's a freaking centipede. Nasty, gnarly looking thing. So I was like, oh, okay, well, there's a centipede. Now I know. And then the next morning I wake up, jump in the shower, turn on the water, turn around to get a towel, turn back to the shower, and there's a centipede scurrying around frantically in the shower. And I was like, oh, my God.
Jeez.
I didn't freak out. Like, I would have freaked out more if he had not told me about them. I'm glad he did tell me because that would have just like, whoa. But as it was just like, okay, well, let me go get the grabber. And then later that night, there was another one we saw just like scurrying across his carpet in the hallway. And so it was just like this. And he's like, I don't know what's going on. I swear they're not normally like this common. So it took me a night or two to like not think they're called mukades. Mukade is Japanese for centipede. Mukade, just like in my bed, anytime I imagined I felt something or whatever, just like, but I made it made it free without getting bit. But that was something.
That sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, that sounds pretty horrific. What does Makade mean? Because like centipede is a pretty stupid name, as like just like an English.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the actual like what each character Mukade means. I wonder if it means actually 100. I don't think it does mean 100 legs because none of those I think are 100. But yeah, I'd be curious. I should have asked my friend. But then yeah, I mean the rest of Kumamoto again, lots of food, ramen shops, just shopping, and then from Kumamoto back up to Fukuoka for a while. Did some more hanging out with friends again. Like I said, Sam's brother Jack lives in Fukuoka, so shout out to Jack. Check him out on his podcast, Jack Silly Star Trek podcast. It's a long name. And his podcast Apecast, because his co-host of that also we hung out with. His name Jeff Clark. He kind of hosted. We played some games with him, and then we all went to Kyoto and went to a monkey park, which was another just amazing highlight. Kyoto itself is another, city, but it's a little bit more low-key, a little like more traditional and kind of not quite as metropolitan. But there's like this park that you could hike up to in the mountains that's just like free roaming monkeys. I don't know how else to describe it.
Wow.
Free range monkeys. You pick out your own monkey and they grill it up right there for you.
Oh.
It's good. No, there's no eating of the monkeys, but they're just like wild monkeys. It's not a zoo. They're not in cage. It's just like the wild monkeys of the mountain. But obviously, they've been fairly domesticated, just because there's literally thousands of tourists just constantly feeding them peanuts. Because that's the thing you could do, is you could go buy peanuts and apples and just like feed it to them. So they're just like all these monkeys sitting there waiting to like, yeah, just give me the peanut. I don't care. Just give me the. But yeah, there's just like all these monkeys. It's great, and they're just like walking around. There's little baby, cute little monkeys. And they're jumping around and just climbing on the roof and, I don't know, doing monkey stuff. They're, monkeys. You all know monkeys.
Yeah.
I know monkeys.
I went to the monkey temple in Nepal, and there's just monkeys running around crazy. Yeah.
And it's funny, too, because there's, like, signs like, oh, here's some monkey trivia, but it's, like, in English, it's not perfectly translated. So they're just, like, funny like turns of phrases. It's like the monkeys have two emotions, anger and fear or something. If a monkey's doing this, he's angry. If a monkey's doing this, he's scared. And it's things like, don't ever look the monkey in the eye.
Yeah.
Don't crouch to the monkey. Like, and it's like, oh, okay. You kind of like, oh God, am I going to do something wrong? But all the monkeys are so just like, whatever, and you're not supposed to touch them. And,
Man, what a terrible life to only have those two emotions.
Anger and fear. Yeah, that's
tortured existence.
Yeah.
But it's on a mountainside, like overlooking just beautiful. Like, again, I have some pictures, but it's just like gorgeous. It's ridiculous how beautiful it is. And this whole time we're taking the bullet train, or the Shinkansen, which is just so convenient, so awesome, so fast, getting around all these cities. And while we're in the cities, taking the subway lines and just like zip zooming around like regulars. And then Tokyo, we're in Tokyo for a couple days and was an awesome way to end the trip. I love Tokyo. I had been there before on a previous trip, and it's just, man, it's unlike any city that I've been to. It's so awesome. And one of the highlights was we happened to be there when, I think I mentioned a couple episodes ago, when Zelda Tears of the Kingdoms came out. So we were there on launch day at the Nintendo store in Tokyo, and it was just awesome, just like an experience. It was packed, and it's kind of funny because it's in a department store, like a nice kind of high-end, classy department store in, downtown Tokyo. And so there's like all these clothing and boutique like wear and art things, and you're going up the floors, and the Nintendo store's on the 6th floor, and it's very just like chill and quiet, and it's very like, and then you get up higher and higher and you start hearing louder noise, and then it's just like thousands of people, all nerds, trying to buy like the Zelda game at this Nintendo store. And spent way too much money there. But it was like, while you're waiting in line, you're just like winding through the shelves. And it's like, ooh, I need these Mario stickers. Ooh, I need this towel. I need for no reason. Ooh, I need this mug. I need right, just like. But it was just awesome to say. Got Zelda from Japan on launch day.
That's really cool.
Nintendo store. And then a lot more eating, couple restaurants, a lot of drinking. We went to some amazing bar. We went to this like bar that's movie themed, where all the drinks are named after movies, but they don't tell you what's in the drink. They just tell you what it's based on. So it's a gin drink, or it's a vodka drink, and it's whatever. It's When Harry Met Sally. It's Die Hard. Or The Crystal Jungle, or it's whatever, right? But you don't know what's in the drink. So it's like, oh, cool. Let's try, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I wonder what that tastes like. And then we went to a couple other we went to this like Showa style bar, which Showa is a period of Japan. Like it's kind of like a retro bar kind of feel. But it's just like, again, so many like drink highballs and shochu, and just like, and you could do this thing where you like pay a flat fee for 2 hours. And for that 2 hours, it's all you could drink. So it's just like, all right, just drink as fast as you can. Beer, highball, like whatever. And they'll just keep bringing them to you. They'll just keep bringing them to you as fast as you can drink them. So the last night in Tokyo may have ended up me drunkenly arguing with Sam and Jeff and Jack about Han Solo getting his blaster as depicted in the Solo, A Star Wars Story, and how much I hated it, and they thought it was fine. I'm sure the people in Tokyo, Tokyo never sleeps, but the people who were trying to sleep, I'm sure appreciated us yelling about that. So
I am just so proud of you.
Yeah, it's important. It's important.
Stand your ground.
Yes. I don't know. I could go into detail about any number of millions of stories, but I'll kind of end it there because, it was awesome. It was fantastic. Japan is really amazing. Definitely anyone, I recommend Japan. I recommend that to go see Japan in theaters near you. It's beautiful. It's, like I said, it's unlike kind of any other place I've been. It's also just like so clean. I think doesn't really capture the full feeling, but
simple
it
and
is
clean.
that. What's that?
Simple and clean.
Simple and clean. It's the way it's making me feel tonight. But like in Tokyo, like I live in LA. I love LA, but God, it's so there's trash everywhere. It's like a joke. It's just trash. It's like that episode of The Simpsons where they stop trash service and they just like dump trash everywhere. It's like that's what LA is compared to Japan or Tokyo, where there's 25 million people and there's like no litter. There's like, cigarette butts a little bit kind of here and there. And there's no public trash cans. If you go, it's like a joke. It's like, what? Why are there no trash cans? Why can I not throw away my trash? But everyone is just like not awful. They just hold on to their trash until they get home or until they find a trash can. You know, like, I don't know. I'm not really doing a great job of kind of.
No, I mean, it just sounds impossible to believe because of how ugly our streets are.
Yeah, it's like, and here, and not all of the U.S. or anywhere, but it just feels like in LA, there's like 5 trash cans within 20 yards of someone, but it's still too far, and they'll just throw their trash right on the ground where they're standing. Whereas someone in Japan, they will hold on to their trash for miles and hours as they go through the subway until they get home to throw it away, or whatever.
Mhm.
So, it does. I don't know. I feel like it is definitely noticeable, just everywhere, and not just the trash, but just like the quality of like moving around, and the quality of their public transit, and the quality of the directions. And you don't need to know Japanese, and you could I think fairly easily get around in Japan even without it. And I don't know, I loved it. It's great. I can't wait to go back at some point soon. So, and thanks Jack for letting me stay at your house, and thanks Brandon for letting me stay at your house. Sorry, I went longer than I was hoping.
No, it's okay. Yeah.
It was a whole country.
You went to a whole other country. It's good. It's good, and I'm glad for one to hear about it, and I hope others are too. And I'm glad that you had a great time. Yeah.
But listeners, I should have said skip ahead from this part of the beginning of my ranting if you had no interest in hearing about my trip in Japan, because now we're going to talk about
just
the Flash.
Just put timestamp. Put an extra timestamp.
Yeah,
in there.
I will.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
What you've all come for, the Flashpoint crisis, is here at last.
It's a crisis.
Spoilers.
Spoilers for I don't even know anymore.
For what is now a dead DCEU.
Yes, spoilers for the past. We'll get to that in a bit, but Ryan.
Yeah.
You're doing this one?
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. The movie starts off with Barry, our hero, who is the Flash. He is sent to save some babies, and he does. He saves some babies because they're falling from the sky, and that's what happens. He saves babies raining from the sky. Batman's trying to take down some guys who like blew up a hospital and stuff, and he's chasing him down. Anyways, the whole chase sequence, they nab the villains. It's all good. So on his way home, Barry stops by his parents' house, and he is sad about his mom's death and his dad's imprisonment. In fact, he's so sad that he travels back in time, and he travels back to the day when his mom would have died, and attempts to change things so she doesn't die by giving her a can of tomatoes. So then, as he's returning to the future after he's done his deed that will assuredly save his mother's life, he returns to the future, but as he's doing so, he travels through something called the Speed Force. It's not important. But what is important is that he's knocked out of the Speed Force by some mysterious craggly dude. And he finds himself, I don't know, a few years in the past from where he started in his, modern time. And he goes to his parents' house and he says, "Yay, my mom's alive! I did it." But he, as I said, he's in the past, so he encounters himself in the past, who's maybe, I don't know, a decade younger or so than he is. But this version of him is aloof and kind of goofy and does drugs and stuff because he grew up with a mother and is privileged. So he decides, he's like, well, this is great. My mom's alive. But when he's in the past, and he's like, oh no, this version of me is not positioned to get my flashy superpowers because he doesn't, he's not in the same position I was during my timeline. So he's created a different timeline is kind of what's going on here. So he takes his younger self, his alternative self, to the point in time and situation in which he originally got his powers, which is in this police building. He gets struck by lightning. In this process, they actually end up switching powers. So now the young Barry has powers, and the old Barry does not. The original Barry does not have powers. Soon after this is when Zod attacks. So for those who remember Man of Steel, the Superman one, when Michael Shannon comes.
No one remembers.
No one remembers it. Well, if you don't, God bless you.
Shout out to Chris. He remembers.
Yeah. So Barry decides, he's like, oh gosh, I better assemble the Justice League because we need to fight this Zod character. And he's kind of asked around to his younger Barry self and other people, hey, who are the Justice League? Is Wonder Woman around? Is Superman around? Is Aquaman around? And they're like, who are those people? But Batman exists. So he goes and finds Batman, and Batman's all drunk and old. But anyway, he gets convinced to help them find a presumably Superman by looking in NASA archives, and there's a space pod that crashed on Earth years ago. Anyway, they go to Siberia and they rescue what they think is Superman, but it's actually Supergirl. Because as I mentioned, this is a different timeline. I mean, how Barry changing his mother, adding a can of tomatoes to his mother's shopping cart affects events before his birth is something.
It's because of the spaghetti. You end up on another spaghetti noodle.
No, you're right. It's spaghetti.
And
also
it's Michael Keaton now.
Yes, it's also Michael Keaton. It's not Ben Affleck. So things have changed. There's more than just like things that have changed in Barry's own personal timeline. Things have changed across the world in the known universe. As I mentioned, there's no Wonder Woman and Aquaman either, so somehow that is also affected. Right. So he now he has Supergirl on his team, Batman, but he then decides I need to get my powers back too. So he does that. Then they all go fight Zod. So we got two Flashes, we got a Batman, we got a Supergirl. They're gonna win. Just kidding, they don't. They get destroyed horribly. But the two Flashes are able to rewind time, so they quick load their file and try again. And they do this about 100 times, quick loading their save file.
Scum the Zod fight.
Yeah, they're save scumming this Zod fight, but they can't do it. They can't do it. They've done it thousands and thousands of times. Who knows how many times? They just can't do it. And eventually, old Barry, who is older and wiser and has learned some hard life lessons about when it's time to give up or whatever, says, hey, young Barry, I this is a lost cause. I think the only solution really here is for me to go back in time and undo that mother-saving tomato can that I did. And younger Barry is young and dumb and says no, and he keeps trying. But when old Barry says, yeah, it's time to call it, that is when the Craggly dude shows up again. And anyway, it turns out that that's the younger Barry who's been stuck in this time loop and is aged, trying this thing over and over and over and over again, and yet never succeeding. So anyway, the old Craggly dude tries to kill Barry, but then young Barry steps in and dies to save old Barry. So anyway, Barry goes back into the past to undo the life-saving can of tomatoes, which will lead to his mother's death. But he does move a bunch of other cans of tomatoes to save his father, who, as I mentioned earlier, is in prison, but these cans of tomatoes will assuredly get him acquitted. And indeed they do. When he returns to the future, the cans of tomatoes save his father's life. So all is well. Barry has reset the past, reset the future, undid his things, learned some life's lessons, and everything is all the same. Oh, but then it turns out everyone has lizard tongues. Actually, just kidding. Batman is now played by George Clooney. The end.
It's raining again. And there's donuts.
Yeah.
Rain from the sky.
Yep. So that is The Flash.
Don't forget the post-credit scene.
Wait, there was a post-credit scene?
Yeah. He gets drunk with Aquaman or something.
I forgot about that.
Right. They just got to remind us that Aquaman's a thing because Aquaman 2 is still coming out, which is awkward.
There's still that. Yeah. It's not the full, complete heat death of the DC universe.
Not yet.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Not yet. Yeah.
Snyderverse.
So, yeah. The post-credit scene, is, hey, Aquaman exists. The end.
I feel like that's a good summary of a lot of things in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'd be accurate. Yeah. So, what did we think about this here, The Flash movie? Well, there you have it. That's the YumChunks take.
Let me see if I get a cricket sound.
Yeah, we can get that in there. Well, I mean, I guess I can go. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot to digest and dissect, I suppose.
But also not.
But also not. But also not. Yeah, that's actually a good way to say this. I'll this kind of just the most kind of guttural reaction was I actually was surprised how much I liked it. I went in with mostly low expectations. I found it surprisingly funny, and when I say surprisingly funny, I had assumed that they were going to try to be funny and fail, but I would say they succeeded more times than they failed, so that's why it's surprising. It's very bloated overall. This probably could have been like, I don't know, 40 minutes shorter. There's a lot of just I don't want to get into all the meta stuff just yet, but just in terms of the movie that I saw, I overall liked it with many, 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 many problems, I guess is my take, which is pretty vague, but there you go.
So yeah, I kind of agree with a lot of that. I think I would take the inverse of that, is that I think I didn't hate it, but overall I didn't like it, with a lot of things that I actually liked, but not, again, not like, I guess it's better than a lot of DC films. I enjoyed it more than a lot of DC films, which is, I think, saying a lot. More about the DC universe than even this movie per se. But it definitely was not something I loved by any means. I think for me, a lot of the humor didn't land, and that we talked about this in the past, but it might have been my experience. It was weirdly like no one was responding to any of the jokes. There's a few times where people chuckled, but overall it kind of felt like everyone was like collectively kind of like, yeah, it's not funny, like an awkward stand-up routine where no one's laughing. But yeah, that I could admit that might just be my experience. But a lot of the stuff, the problems, I think were just they were so massively just like shoved in every aspect of this film that it was hard for me for those parts that I did enjoy, that I did think were interesting or kind of cool or funny or unique or whatever, to not just get overshadowed by just like, oh, wait, I'm trying to look at get out of my way. I'm trying to look at and enjoy this. Oh, why is this here now? That kind of experience. But yeah, we'll get into it. Oh, Chewy.
Yeah, so Ryan or Sean, I think I lean closer to where you're at. You know, Ryan, you said that you were expecting a lot of attempted humor that didn't land, or that wouldn't land, and you actually liked a lot of it. But no, I found myself laughing quite a bit during this movie, but not at things I don't think that they wanted me to laugh at. Just a short list. How much spaghetti there was. How much?
Somewhat that was intentional.
How much?
That was somewhat.
Yeah. The George Clooney bit. The Nicolas Cage bit. But I just I don't know. This was like watching a train wreck. I did not like this movie, but there was some joy to be found. But God, what a mess. Just
it is a mess.
Like a plate of spaghetti.
I mean, I don't like Ezra Miller, and I think that like he plays the most annoying member of the Justice League. And what did they do? They made another second Ezra Miller who's far more annoying. And
Yeah,
I have
this
a lot of
is-
thoughts on
he's
that.
just loudly and grossly shoving food into his face the entire movie. His face is covered in spaghetti sauce. There's a lot of spaghetti in this movie. Just loudly smacking, and his laugh is like a combination of like Seth Rogen and Peter Griffin, and he constantly like I was angry for a lot of anytime Otherberry was on screen, I was mad. And also I went with Maeve, who does not like the Snyderverse movies at all, and there were so many times where she was just like, "This is torture. I cannot handle this," and I couldn't disagree. I was like, I don't know. I mean, I was there because we have to talk about it. But I feel like I'm going crazy a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, I'm looking at the reviews and I'm listening to what people are saying, and like, did I see the same movie? I don't like, I'm not going to watch this.
I mean, I haven't read a lot of reviews, but
Yeah, I think it's maybe one of those situations where it just passes muster. So which would otherwise be like a ratings wise just like a D movie, like just passing.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's binary, then it's extra
yeah.
inflated. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Yeah, the Flash is converting to a pass-fail grading system.
Yeah,
I don't.
If you look at a lot of those positive reviews, there are a lot of 3 out of 5s.
Yeah,
but
and that's where I would put it. Like
the other thing is that I've talked to a lot of people, because I had to, like, I was going places with my sisters the other day, and I was asked them both, like, are you guys gonna see this movie? Because I have to talk about it, like, now. And both of them are like, no, we're not. We have no plans of seeing that movie. And I feel like it's kind of at the point where the people who are turned off by Zack Snyderverse are done with it. And
well, yeah, I wonder how much because it's bombing.
it is.
Yeah.
So I think between that and also Ezra Miller's shenanigans, I think people are just not here for it. And so the people who are, like, if you look at the user scores, those are the people who actually saw the movie. It's inflated. So yeah, I'm just glad it's all almost over, and I also find it's hilarious. Like, okay, I'm not sure if this is actually what happens.
Don't be glad that it's over, Chewie. Be upset that you had to go through
Right.
it. That's that classic saying.
That's how it goes. Yes. In this timeline. But I think it's hilarious, and in my head, this is what happened. I will not be convinced otherwise, because who cares? The rules are made up anyway. In my head, the Snyderverse has now been banished into the Joel Schumacher verse, and that is what it gets. That is what it deserves. That is what it's become. A giant joke. That is what it's turned into. Also, Sean, you and I were having a conversation about this years ago, about how you thought all the 90s Batmans were in the same continuity, and I said, no, I think the Burton verse is one, and then the Schumacher verse is another, and I think this movie confirmed that. Care to comment?
Maybe? How? Well, just because Clooney shows up,
Right? Yeah,
it's
a different timeline. It's a completely different than Michael.
Or it confirms that when Michael Keaton gets old enough, he turns into George Clooney.
I don't think that's not what happened. That isn't what happens. But also, I don't know.
I skipped the Val Kilmer phase.
I mean, I love that in this movie they explain time travel as in time travel is magic and does whatever we want it to do.
Yes. Well, I want to talk more about that. But just, no, I think our experiences were definitely tied to the viewing experience we had. Like, I saw it in the Irvine Spectrum, right? So that it definitely enhanced sort of the cinematic quality of it. And it was full of a bunch of
cinematic quality in huge air quotes.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. How did you know? We don't have our camera on. How did you know I did that? And of course, the audience was full of people who were ready to enjoy the movie.
Yeah. My audience was full of, well, it wasn't full, but there was about 20 people in it, which is larger audience than I've seen recently for most movies.
Yeah.
Nobody was laughing. I was, once again, one of the few people laughing at anything, and it was mostly stuff that wasn't supposed to be funny.
I mean, there were certain things where, like the Nick Cage thing, Okay,
Mhm.
where like I rolled my eyes at that, where the rest of the audience was clapping and like, yeah, like okay, come on, guys. Like,
I liked that, if for no other reason, that finally that Nicolas Cage legend of Nicolas Cage Superman fighting the Spider is been like, it has a conclusion, it has resolution, it's been filmed.
guess.
Technically, it has been legitimized. It is canon in a movie
well,
somewhere.
so okay, maybe, but I think you're late. They're late to the game because that has already been canonized in the Teen Titans movie. Nick Cage plays Spider-Man, so that
that's
joke has already run
Superman.
its course.
He also does play
Oh,
Spider-Man.
okay. Well, I didn't see that, and maybe they figure a lot of people didn't see that unless you were, into the cartoon. So, new for me. Whatever. I feel like they can put it to rest now.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if they had to put anything to rest.
They did.
Are references like their own arcs now that we have to have a 3-act structure for just nostalgic reference to
This movie would have you believe that, yes.
I guess. I read a friend posted this. Apologies, I'm sure I'm going to butcher it, but it was like an excerpt from an article or a review of the movie or something like that, and they said something like, "The Flash is like the opposite of the Kuleshov effect," which, the Kuleshov, like, right, where you show a bunch of people just like images, random images in an order, and they will derive meaning from those images, right? Classic cinema, all about film and editing and blah blah blah. The Flash is the opposite of that. Is that people will come into what like the meaning that they want to get, and then you can just show them whatever, and they'll just be like, "Yeah, I got," like, right, like that is kind of what the Flash is. Is like people want to be nostalgic and like, I don't know, like think this is some celebration of the DC. Yeah, whatever. Just give them the bare minimum of CGI garbage, and they'll cheer at it. And I guess it worked for some people. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was definitely more so my audience. But I think just in terms of like the humor, like I think the CGI falling babies, like I don't know that was intentional. Like I was laughing hysterically, and I think just that opening sequence kind of won me over because I'm like, oh boy, this is the kind of movie this is going to be. So I at that point my expectations was pretty high, and while it never lived up to that high, I read the spaghetti and its very sloppy noises as really really hitting the Ryan button on that one. And earlier in the movie, when he orders that sandwich, yeah.
What am I don't like this. I got
this is
headphones
great.
on.
It's
this is like
mouth noises.
Bad ASMR.
The deli guy, he pushes a raisin into some goo, and it makes that noise. And I'm like, they know what they're doing. There's some craftsmen behind this film. At least in the sound effects department, because
I was gonna say when you said it never reaches the highs of the opening scene again, like you're not going to when the opening scene has a baby being shoved into a microwave.
Yeah,
I know. I did think that was a strong opening just because of how out there. It's like, oh, okay, I'm giving him credit for the sheer ridiculousness, and I get it. It's funny. Like the concept is funny. Like I wasn't like laughing out loud, and again, partially because maybe the audience or whatever reason. But I did like it. I thought, oh, okay, I'm actually kind of on board for a little bit. And then the film gradually wore me away until I no longer was really there. But yeah, shoving the baby into the microwave, like that was the best moment because like I kind of like even forgot the context of like what is he doing?
Yeah, what's going on here?
Why is that saving the baby?
Yeah, like after that when Batman comes back, I'm like, what was the scene about? Something was happening.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I did, but that opening, I thought that was I thought that was a strong opening.
I will agree with that.
I just wish it had kept, like it went just along the route of a movie that kind of maybe takes itself just a little too seriously, with moments that it thinks are too funny. I think it would have been served better if it kept the tone from that opening. Like, yeah, this is going to get ridiculous, but we're going to keep our funny, our cheek in our tongue. What's the expression? Our tongue in our cheek?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I feel like, yeah.
My tongue's always in my cheek. Where else would you put your tongue?
It's not in your cheek. It's between your two cheeks. You fool.
Right.
Well, but I mean, then what does the saying mean? That you're impaling your cheek with your thumb?
I don't care.
With your tongue?
No, I think if the humor had kept up and had worked the way that shoving a baby into a microwave did, I feel like this movie could be along the lines of like the Ant-Man series. Like this could be what this is for DC. But it just didn't. Is the thing. There were little pops here and there of like, but then I think that this movie relied too much on Worser Barry, thinking that character was going to be funny. And I think a lot of the movie rides on that. You know, do you like the interaction between present day Barry and other Barry? And I just didn't. Like, I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't stand. I couldn't stand other Barry and his apartment full of also annoying roommates.
Right.
One of them was from Dairy Girls, who was there for 5 minutes. Yeah, I couldn't stand it. It was just off-putting and annoying for most of it.
Agreed.
Yeah. Not doesn't make it's the stuff I liked about the movie is not enough to make up for the stuff that I didn't like.
Yeah. On the topic of annoying Ezra Miller, it's so modern day Ezra Miller, Barry Allen is extremely annoying, right? He's just like,
yes.
Oh my gosh, like please just stop doing anything right now. Just stop.
Yeah.
So when he goes to the past and he encounters himself, who is altogether not that different from him, right? Like maybe they should have made a wider gap between the two personalities.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, he's even more annoying than you are. Like, so finally we escape the annoying Barry Allen, who now has to be a little serious because he's got himself into some hot water. But we've encountered an even more annoying Barry Allen. But what's interesting is that older Barry Allen, now seeing how annoying his younger self is, gets very serious, right? And you're like, oh, this is great. He's matured. Like he's realizing how horrible it is to interact with him for other people. And so, which is like, okay, this is good because it's a weird way to show like a evolution of a character or whatever you want to say. Except at the end of the film, jumping ahead a little bit here, he immediately reverts back to his ultra annoying self. So it's like they throw all that potential learnings away for his character.
Okay, so I was thinking about all of that and I drew the conclusion that this movie is the DC Cars 2. Because that is Cars 2, and which is my favorite.
You mean Mater takes front seat?
Yeah, Cars 2 is my favorite Cars movie. Because of the same reasons that I was laughing a lot, not for the reasons the movie wanted me to. Ryan, I think you and I saw that one together.
Because the difference is that in the Flash, a car doesn't get its soul ripped out of it.
That's true. There were a lot of horrifying, probably unintentionally, but horrifying things in Cars 2, and I was just at awe about what I was seeing. Also the same as the Flash, and the main character's arc is about learning that everybody hates him.
That's actually very. I like the parallel.
But also, as in the Flash, he does nothing to change his behavior or personality, and is just as annoying going forward after the events of the film.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
The Flash is Cars 2. Where do we go from there?
Yeah, I mean, Ezra Miller, it's just annoying. It's just not a likable character. They want him to be Spider-Man. They want him to be Tom Holland.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, I'm sure we've talked about this before, but the parallels are, and maybe that is a version of the Flash from the comics. Ultimately, I don't really care either way. It can work, but not with an unlikable character, or a character as unlikable as this. And I'm not even purely saying it's Ezra Miller, though it's easy to paint them as at fault because Ezra Miller is a jerk. Well, not just a jerk, but I think it's just the writing and just like it. I never liked the Flash enough to be on his own. Why would I want two of them to kind of be the entire movie? Although I will say the introduction of the younger Flash was funny because I was like, what? He's like kicking down a trash can and then just being a complete garbage person. And like that, and like, oh, here's our other protagonist. Can't you wait to spend more time with this guy?
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's intentional that they're showing him, I guess, to be unlikable. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah, that's unclear, right? Because at first I thought, okay, the movie is trying to paint a picture where, you know, they've set it up early on where Bruce is talking to Barry and saying, yeah, my losses have defined me and it made me a better person in a certain way, right? And that's kind of ultimately one of the messages of the film. So when we are introduced to the younger Flash and we say, oh, he hasn't had to grow up with hardship, and so he is just a complete kind of worthless person or whatever. But then they end up making him like, they kind of drop that note and he's like, no, he's cool, he's good.
Yeah, so there's a scene that I actually didn't completely hate, but it didn't really resonate with the movie at large, and that is later in the film before main Flash trying to get his powers back, and he's like, he kind of bursts out at him, right? And the other Flash is just like, the younger Flash is like, what? I'm just like, what's your problem, man? I've just been here to help.
Yeah.
And you do feel like guilty or something? And it's like, what? Why am I feeling bad? This guy's been a complete, garbage person this whole time.
Yeah.
And now but that scene, the dynamic between the two in terms of just their characters, I thought that scene was actually, I kind of like that scene. Same with there are scenes, in isolation here and there. Like, I even think the ending with Flash going back to his mom, I thought that the film did not earn it, and it did not hit as well as I think they would have liked it if the film had been more coherent. But I do think that was a touching moment where he's interacting with his mom and she gives him a hug. Like, it's heavy-handed and obviously very melodramatic, but whatever. That, they're going for the high emotion stuff. But the rest of the film, I don't think really supported that. There's a scene early on where Bruce is like, or the Flash is, Barry's like, we could hang out. You want to hang out and stuff? And Bruce is like, nah, sorry, Barry. And right there's that's an interesting scene. I thought that was a little, but they never do that.
They never really went back to it.
Yeah, and I thought both in Batman and in the Flash's characters, I felt like, oh, that's kind of an interesting scene and their dynamic and what that means for both those characters. And that's what I mean. There's these scenes in isolation that I think are actually kind of interesting and have some cool character beats.
Right, and I think I think that's an interesting opportunity to see kind of pairings of different DCU characters, different characters, right? I think that's one thing that maybe, if there's anything that DC is accidentally almost doing well, is sort of the pairings of different heroes and characters and how their relationships and stuff. So I thought the Barry and Bruce relationship, kind of friendship, non-friendship, was something interesting, right? Bruce is kind of they acknowledge, both our mothers were killed. They're both named Martha. So it's really important character moment that
oh man, they missed that opportunity.
Yeah.
Her name should have been Martha. Dang it.
Yep.
Yeah. This film sucks.
Yep.
I hate it now. The other thing is, so I also think they should have brought back that action, so that whole opening sequence, like we said, I think it is a stronger part of the film, but I wanted those, it to kind of wrap around by the third act, or when he comes back, or have, the villains, they had some, it wasn't about them, but I don't know, it mattered in some way. It factored into the greater plot. Or maybe he came back to the present day, but he came back as this is going on, and he's able to help Batman actually stop them, as opposed to saving them. You know what I mean? I wanted a little bit of a frame, a bookend that matched the beginning. That was a bit of a callback that showed his growth in a very visual, easy to digest, oh, this is what he was at the beginning in this scenario, and now look at him where he's come,
right,
and what he's doing in this scenario.
And that's what I was getting at before, where when we see him back in the present, we want our hero to have gone through this journey, learned something, grown. and he ends up right back in the place where he is, a befuddled idiot who can't say a sentence without tripping over himself. Which I get. He's supposed to be charming in that way. It doesn't work, and the movie knows it doesn't work because they've introduced us to young Barry, who that is his.
And they comment on it not working.
Right.
Like he even says, like, that's what I sound like. That's how annoying I am.
Exactly.
Or something like that.
He's self-referential, meaning
he stop doing it then.
And that's how he becomes self-aware, right? It's the most like blatant, heavy-handed way someone can become self-aware is to literally see themselves being an idiot. So to see him not grow is and I think Sean, to have him maybe like he comes and saves the day because he's at the beginning of the film he feels like he's in a low place in terms of his position in the Justice League and other places in his life, right? So that would be a nice way for him to kind of achieve some growth in his character. Like, because I honestly thought that they were going to address the fact that Batman in this universe is a complete idiot and destructive menace, because there's a reason, right? Police nowadays don't really go on car chases, right? Because it ends up causing more damage than whatever they're presumably trying to stop, right? So by Batman destroying half the city by chasing these people, no, an intelligent Batman, the Batman I know, would track them, hunt them, find them at where they're going, intercept them there, right? Stealth-wise, not just destroying half the city. And I don't know how that could have changed, how Barry's interaction could have changed, but he could have said, "Hey Bruce, that ship is shielded. Roger that," and then not crash into the ship. That was a point I laughed hard at for the wrong reasons, because that was a very stupid scene. But anyway, Sean, to your point, I agree.
So this couple things that you just reminded me what you were saying, especially at the beginning. There's so much of the plot beats of this film. Like, if you think of a plot should in general try to resemble a chain, right? Like each link in that chain is required, otherwise the chain falls.
Yeah.
There are so many things in this plot where there is missing, like just independently, like, okay, this happened. Nothing before this scene mattered because this scene just happened, and this is what's happening in the movie now. Like, okay, he's traveling back in time now. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
There's no inciting incident. There's just like, oh, I decided to travel back in time. It's 25 minutes in the movie. All right, this is a good time. Scene 12, I'm traveling back in time.
Sean, he's so sad that he travels back in time. That's why.
Like, it wasn't like a discovery or something that, because he was so sad, he, like, accidentally discovered this, or it just, what?
He got overwhelmed with emotions, so he ran, just like Forrest Gump.
I guess, but he always runs. It would be like, I don't know, like there has to be something, and also just like, so just getting struck by lightning, anyone could be the like that, like what? That's not how that works, right? You can't just be the Flash whenever you want.
Yeah, that is an interesting. I think that is canon, though, in terms of the comics, which I always thought was stupid. Like,
well, the uniqueness of that, but like the duplicating it, I guess, is right. That maybe
it's
that happens.
It's that and all the chemicals on the shelf,
chemicals,
and that just seems so silly. Like you could just this crazy 1 in a million accident they were able to replicate in the exact same way. Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that because they did that in the comic that makes it okay. No, that it absolutely doesn't. I've always found that silly and dumb.
The replicating it in the moment, like that, I don't like the circumstances. I thought it was pretty ham-fisted how they got back to there, but I'm kind of okay with, because it's like kind of Back to the Future. We know lightning's going to strike this time.
Right.
Let's plan around that, right? There's just something to that. But when later in the film, when he's like, I'm just deciding now, I'm going to get my power back. Like, why did you go through this whole movie without your powers if you knew that you could have just got them at any time by being struck by lightning? It wasn't like he discovered that or was a organic part of the plot as they rescued Supergirl and did this other stuff. Like, oh, because of this, I figured out that, like, no, I'm just deciding now.
Right,
I want my powers
he just
back,
decides.
So let's do it.
I mean, it would be great if after that scene, Batman's like, hey, you know what? Me too. Let's do this.
Yeah, exactly. I literally thought the same thing. I was like, Batman would be like, okay, I'm going to do it now. Like,
because he would actually use the powers well and be intelligent instead of just a spaz.
I don't know. But that's what I mean. Where there's just like a lot of things that were unmotivated, that were not set up, that were not ingrained in any sort of the plot. It was just like, well, we need this to happen now, or we want this to happen now. I don't know. I guess it's the same thing,
Right?
And it just happens.
Another point in the movie where, very much along those lines, is Supergirl runs off. Right? She leaves the two Barrys and Batman and goes off to go find Zod. Right?
Yeah.
And they're kind of stuck there, and they're trying to figure out how to get Barry his powers back. And then she just returns. Like, why does she return? She returns like at the right time to help Barry get his powers back, but she's like, "Hey, I'm back now," because of reasons. Yeah. Also, like when Barry goes back to the past originally, he's like, "Oh, today's the day when I get my powers. I need to make sure you get the powers." Like, why?
Yeah.
I was very confused. Like, why? What do you mean? Why does he?
I think because at that point he thought that he was in the past of his own timeline. Because after that they go to Wayne Manor and Michael Keaton explains, no, this timeline's past is different too. It doesn't work that way. I think that's the reason.
I think you're right. Because Barry's kind of dumb, so I guess he wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Also, it's funny. It is funny that like Batman just knows how time travel works.
Right. Yeah. Barry,
especially the Keaton Batman. Like of all the Batmans, he's the Batman.
Yeah, I think Barry's like, okay, I'm back before all this happened. He has to get the powers so that I'll get the powers too, because then he'll live through in the causality loop and all that stuff.
I guess
I think that was his, and then Batman tells him, no, it does not like Back to the Future. He was going off of Back to the Future bits or logic, which MCU already did that joke. Come on, like they did that in Endgame, but
yes.
Though I do like that they had the Eric Stoltz business. That's
that was kind of a funny thing. I do think they needed another beat on that in the final act, or a callback, right? Like you need another callback to that joke, but twisted.
And also they telegraphed the George Clooney thing by doing that, right?
That's true.
By posting
it
up,
they set that expectation.
Yeah, I mean, I even said to Maeve before they even showed the car, like he's talking to Batman and he's like, "I'm on my way over," and I'm like, "Okay, which Batman is it going to be?"
Yeah. Right, I said the same thing.
Like, it's going to be, it might be Christian Bale, but it's probably going to be Pattinson. That would make logistically the most sense.
It could have been.
But Clooney was a nice surprise.
I mean, I'm glad it's not Pattinson, because then the Batman could just be its own thing.
Yeah.
Not be just got spaghetti on his face. The other thing, so you brought up earlier, Chewie. Well, we all did, and we got to okay, we've been talking about spaghetti, but specifically in terms of how the film is using spaghetti. What the heck? Like, okay, so part of me wants to give them credit for like, oh, okay, that's an idea. They're like, oh, okay, like it's not just linear forward thinking. Do you think the future can change the past? Like that's a fun, like, you know, if you were a freshman in college and like, I don't know, getting high with your friends and like go, oh man, what if like the future could change the past? And like that's the extent they thought about it in this film. Like if you're gonna introduce that idea, like, okay, that can maybe be interesting, cool, okay. You know, you care to explain it in any like add to like make any sort of set? What are they talking about?
No.
It doesn't make any sense.
I think it does make sense. Well, I at least I'm going to try to make sense of it and see if you guys, because this is how it made sense to me as I was watching the movie. So he's like, all right, all these timelines exist, all the multiverses, everything that has ever happened and ever will happen already exists because it has to. So there's all these infinite amount of timelines. And so when you make a decision, now you're on this timeline. Because he made a decision in the past, he jumped into the timeline where that was true already. Because everything already exists, and everything that will ever happen and has happened already all exists at the same time. So there is a universe where Barry goes in and does this thing, and now it's this timeline. So that happened to just be the timeline where other things. Oh no, it doesn't make any sense anymore.
Yeah, you had me going for a while. Then
yeah, I was like, oh wait,
that is an interesting idea. But I mean, that is not what the movie is saying, though.
It's not what the movie's saying, and I think there's like, okay, if you're talking about the multiverse, sure, that makes sense.
Right.
That's one thing, right? The multiverse, all these completely different versions of the universe where there's variations and different things, but that's not time travel, or at least that's not the same thing as saying, because if you're having the multiverse that all these things exist independently, you can't then also say it's dependent on your choice you made here.
I think you can. I think that.
But not if that choice. But then not if the past is also different. You know what I'm saying? That like if it's a completely independent multiverse or timeline, then it's not dependent on the choices you made in this thread of spaghetti.
I think the real reason that they went this way is so DCU could say, "Hey, we can do the multiverse too. We can recast these characters as from other actors." Right, because they could have just kept it to a strict time travel story, right? Which is which is, in my opinion, probably a wiser choice.
I think I would agree. I would agree with that. I kind of think it would have been better. I think there's ways with a simple time travel story they could have had some of these fun sequences. Like, I guess sure, everyone, that's cool. Michael Keaton's back, but. Did we really need that for this movie? Like, it didn't actually add anything, and by which I mean, it didn't add anything for it to be Michael Keaton's Batman in this movie, right? Let's say it was just Ben Affleck as Batman, how would it have changed? How would it have changed anything?
No, it wouldn't.
Right.
It's just fan service, and the thing is that since when we're on the topic, Michael Keaton as Batman did nothing for me in this movie because. The reasons why I like him as Batman in the Burtonverse are not present here. He's phoning it in my opinion. He's standing around in the suit. He's just, hey, I'm Michael Keaton. I'm here because here I am. And I don't know. He's not the charismatic character that I have is the reason why I would have been excited for him to show up in this one. Michael Keaton, that is not as good.
I mean, I didn't like dislike him. I thought he was fine. I thought he was, Batman. I guess it's cool to see him as Batman. The cynicalness of it though is just hard to overlook, especially with things like the line, like you want to get nuts, let's get nuts. Like
it's so
that wasn't even a line that was famous until like it became memeified, and I mean I guess that's fine because now that's fine to be modern day references to modern memes, but it's just like I don't like. Why would he say that?
No, he wouldn't because you have to remember what was actually going on in the first Keaton Batman movie when he does say that. It's a completely different situation.
Like no one remembers the context.
Right. It's just we like it because it's funny, haha. But like even Keaton in this movie when he says it, he has an air about it where he's like, "All right, you want me to say it, so." I'm gonna say the thing, and it's like.
Well, what you don't know is that the Bruce Wayne from that universe says that phrase all the time. Oh, it's just kind of like his catchphrase.
He just always says that, but like, and that's true for all of like. So going back to kind of the Nick Cage thing, like, again, it's like, it's an interesting concept. I don't just mean the past thing, but this idea of like all these multiverses, right? But it's hard to look past it as cynical and the kind of the pick me too. You like Marvel, then Marvel did it, right? So we could do it. Look what we can do.
I think it's go ahead.
No, I was just going to affirm that it felt like that.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate that you look back. This is bringing the Snyderverse full circle because it's going back to the first one, Man of Steel, and I think that it's appropriate that what is also come first full circle is them trying to keep pace with Marvel, because back when that came out, it was like, all right, Superman. All right, how did Marvel do it? They introduced all these characters with individual movies and then did a team up. And DC went, oh no, that's working. We better do that too. So after Superman, they're like, let's make a movie with Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, and then let's go straight to Justice League. It's like, no, you can't. You can't. That's not. You're going too fast. You're shoving too much stuff in here. And I like to think of the context of like, imagine, like in the 90s when a lot of these characters were getting their first time on screen, like, could you imagine that this is what the Flash movie would be? Like, right? Like, it's such a mess, and it's like, there's no room for the Flash even. He feels like He feels like not as important in his own movie. Like, this is not what I want.
Well, part of me even wonders how much that was maybe in editing or post or reshoots because of Ezra Miller, and they tried to maybe downplay him or something like that. I've even heard rumors of speculation that was kind of part of it because it seems so noticeable. Like, I'm not saying shoving in Supergirl, because I kind of actually liked her and she was kind of good and it was an interesting kind of unique thing, and it wasn't quite fan service in the same way, right? It wasn't a recognizable face.
Right.
It wasn't a recognizable. I was like, oh, at least that, like, it's fan service in a way that, like, oh, Supergirl is a thing, but it's a new character. It's for this universe, and so I kind of like that or her, even though I ultimately don't think she had anything to do and was wasted.
Yeah,
blah blah blah. But I forgot what I was saying, but you just everything. I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, Supergirl was a big nothing for me. I don't feel like I got to know that character. I don't feel like she had one. It's just like, oh, look, it's not Superman. It's Supergirl this time. All right, cool. I mean, I thought, when they go to rescue Superman, I was expecting, like in actual Flashpoint, him to be Superman would be there, but he'd be a crumbled, shriveled up Gollum man
person,
and then escapes, and then I was like, oh, cool, they're doing that, and maybe they'll do a Red Sun kind of thing and Superman will be evil again or something. I don't know, but it's like, okay, it seemed like that was what was going to happen, but then it's Supergirl, and I'm like, I don't know this character, and she's just here. I'm hearing a lot of like, oh, she was great as Supergirl, but like, how?
Yeah,
what do you mean? Explain what you mean by that.
She just wasn't bad.
Okay, that's the standard we're going off of.
Yes.
I think for me, it just meant like, I was like, oh, I think I like the idea of her as being in existence.
Okay.
Like,
I like the idea.
The only real character, anything they give her is that she I don't know, she says something to Barry where she's like, your Superman may have been sympathetic towards humanity, but from what I've seen, humanity sucks, right? Because she's been kept in a prison her whole life. I was like, oh, this is interesting. Maybe she's gonna be like a Superman that's, or in that role, that's like harsh on humanity and is willing to be punitive. And
you mean, or at least you mean like Zack Snyder's Superman?
I was gonna say, that were the case, that didn't work. That wouldn't work because
don't rescue people, Superman. I'm the moral center of this movie. Your father. Don't rescue people.
Yeah, Superman in this universe has always just been a creepy weirdo who has no kind of I don't know. Yeah, it.
But I'm just saying, like,
sorry.
I mean, you're absolutely right. Like, just like seeing her on film and like fighting and doing stuff. Like, I thought she looked good in the suit. Like she
looks good in the suit.
Blah 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 blah. That's all fine. But I completely agree. It just felt like she only existed, or what And I guess instead of Superman, because they wanted to do this multiverse thing, majig, and all it ended up doing was making the film longer. And
so that's the other thing, is like the idea of going back to Zod's in Initial Invasions, also something I think like that's kind of a cool concept, but the way they even frame it, the way even Barry frames it in the film, like not even like even taking a step back and approach it from a meta perspective, but even the way Barry is, it doesn't even really make sense. Where he's both like, we have to, like, he knows that, like, what does he think he's doing? Wonder Woman wasn't around there. Batman didn't do anything. Aquaman didn't do anything in the original Zod invasion.
Right. It was just Superman. He should have just focused on looking for Superman.
Right, but no one knew who Superman was or if he even existed. And so
no one knew who Superman was before the Zod invasion at his time, like in the real world.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, I mean, are you just saying he should have just trusted that Superman would have shown up?
Well, I'm just saying that he would have. He
had no reason to doubt that wouldn't.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. He would have. I guess that's what I'm saying. Is why does he think he has to do anything?
The movie's allowed to be stupid.
That's actually a good point.
If your main character is stupid, the movie's allowed to be stupid. You could just say, well, he's dumb, so nothing he does has to make sense.
Well, okay, so let me think about this. So I originally said that Supergirl only exists as a way to do the multiverse, but in actuality, she exists to fulfill a plot element. And so I'm going to break this down. So in the final conflict between Zod, Superman originally is able to defeat Zod. Okay.
Yeah.
In this retelling or whatever. There's no Superman, so instead what we have are 2 Flashes, a Supergirl, and a Batman. Okay, between those 4 characters, they cannot defeat Zod, despite the fact that they are able to reload their save file infinitely.
Yeah.
So what they're saying is that Supergirl is accompanied by 2 Flashes and a Batman is weaker than a Superman.
Yeah. Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, I guess
that
so.
is correct. Another thing, yeah.
And all Superman did to defeat him was just snap his neck. Also, it wasn't like,
Oh, right, yeah.
you know, in Man of Steel, that's how he defeats Zod, is he just snaps his neck, and they can't even do that.
Yeah. So Supergirl is one of the things that makes me feel like I'm going crazy reading reviews, because there's just so many reviews praising her.
I honestly think it's people latching on. I think it's people latching on to something that is not annoying and not, obviously messy. I mean, it is somewhat messy, and it's just like, okay, well, there was some stuff that was kind of fun and some punchy stuff that was cool, and she looked in a suit. Good enough for, what else am I going to praise about this movie?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty accurate. Like, it's the least not good thing.
Okay, so we haven't talked about this at all yet, but we have to at least bring this up. Because, and Ryan and I were talking about this.
I knew this is...
So, I still do not understand this. This is perplexing me. I have never seen a film where their aesthetic, I can only assume, for reasons that we could get into, is an intentional aesthetic choice for that aesthetic look to be ugly.
PlayStation
to be
2.
Uncanny. To be PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
To be intentionally bad looking. Like,
Uncanny Valley.
What is happening? Yeah. Why did they it's not just like, CG sometimes look like this, or it was a timing thing or a budgetary thing. And for some of that, it's like, okay, maybe, but it is so everywhere in this film, in scenes and shots, that it does not have to be, that they had to intentionally go in and make it look this way. Why would they make the film look so awful? It looks so ugly.
Well, like, my take was like, okay, so when Ezra Miller is sharing a scene with himself, right? One of the faces is animated poorly or ugly, as Sean stated.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, the Parent Trap solved this problem, a good half century ago. Yeah. So I don't know what their problem is here, why they couldn't get that right. Granted, yes, they wanted to do more complex things, and so they, in their interactions. But there are, Sean, as you're getting at, like, there are some scenes where there's only one Ezra Miller on camera, yet they're still animating his face. And
yes, I don't understand.
Baffling.
So it's like it's in the Whedon Justice League when they had to CGI Superman's mouth.
Yes.
To get rid. It's like that for Ezra Miller's their entire face in multiple shots where it is just a close up or medium shot of Ezra Miller, and throughout the film of other characters. I mean, when he's in the speed zone or the speed force, whatever the speed zone, dome, whatever that arena of stupidity is, whatever that place is.
That's the formal title, Arena of Stupidity.
Yeah. The look is, everyone there is that look. So it's just Ron Livingston or his mom or Ben Affleck or
wait, Sean, did you say Ron Livingston? Because I like that as the.
It is funny that Ron Livingston is his dad instead of
the other guy.
Why did they not get the other guy? His dad changed form in the past. Anyway, or not in the past. It's current. Anyway. Anyways, but in that Speed Force, that is the intentional look. They all look like Uncanny Valley.
Yeah.
And I've since read an interview with the director, and this comes across as such a just like gaslighting, just like he was saying this, and maybe I'm being harsh, but they did that in the Speed Zone specifically, intentionally, because they wanted to convey what it looked like for the Flash, because the Flash is moving so fast, the way he perceives reality and people is different and distorted. So they purposely made it look like that so the audience can know what it looks like for the Flash.
Yeah, okay.
Right, like I also heard that, and I was kind of like, yeah, but why would you intentionally make it look bad?
Right.
Like
No,
you
no,
would
no,
you would
make it look
stylize
bad.
it, sure. Stylizing is great because that means that there's some art direction behind
Yeah.
how things are going to look, right? We've talked about that
Yes.
recently in the Spider-Verse movie, but here it's so your aesthetic was bad. That's what you're going for.
Yeah, well, you nailed
Yes,
it.
it's like they took
Yeah.
CGI Tarkin, CGI Leia, CGI whoever the heck else, and put them
Luke.
all in a scene together. But it's as if, but when Carrie Fisher is alive and standing on set, and Peter Cushing is alive and standing on set, right there, they're right there. Film them
Right.
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we're gonna get the CGI versions and have scenes.
Now, Ryan, you mentioned like that the Parent Trap figured that out, half a century ago, and I think that that's a good, like, I think, given all the reshoots and all the just nonsense behind the scenes, I doing something like the Parent Trap takes precise planning, because it's you have to figure out cinematography. How are you where are the doubles gonna be? What's the timing of the scene? What angle do we need to put the camera to make this convincing, et cetera, et cetera? And I don't think that any kind of forethought was put into anything with this movie. I think, given the reshoots and everything, I think they probably went, okay, this is what we're doing now. We'll let the CGI artists figure that out.
Yeah,
I think that there's a lot of that going on. I think that there's really a lot of that the CGI they'll make this work, and I think maybe and from here I'm just speculating. I think maybe it's a cat situation where it's like we don't have time to do all this. Like, what pick or choose. Like, we can do some of this really well, or we can do all of this looking terribly. Right, like, and I think that's probably what happened. I don't know. I wasn't there, but
I still but why would they choose to CG a single shot of Ezra Miller? What, like, you don't have to CG that. Why? You didn't CG in other shots of Ezra Miller standing in front of the camera talking, a non-special effects shot. But there are shots of that. What is it? Why is that in the movie?
I don't know, and that's again why I feel like I'm going crazy when I hear all the praise for this movie. I don't understand how anybody could look at this movie and try to argue that it's a good movie. It works for you, fine, but I also feel like people who it works for are maybe a little bit in denial. I don't see it. I just can't see it.
So going like that explanation about the special effects is like sort of like, oh shoot, this doesn't look good. Let's come with the explanation. I almost feel like some of the humor works that way, where they like, oh, this is obviously bad. Well, we'll just put a joke in it about it or something, like somehow try like so when Barry first starts running super fast and he's like running across the world, it looks hilarious. Like, they only do it that one time.
So that was I had that note too, and was this kind of in Justice League? It didn't. If it was, I don't remember quite as distinctly. But anytime he's actually running, why is he running like a Mano? Why is he running like a weird dweeb? What does he know how to run?
Because I think that's supposed to be like the way his form of running. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But it's very funny, right? Because he's
like distractingly so.
Yeah, distractingly so. And again, but I think they know it looks that way, or knew. It's like, okay, we can't make this look convincing, or good. So instead, we'll let it be silly, but then we'll be self-referential about how silly it looks, so we can kind of have our cake and eat it too. And that's sort of what what you're saying.
Yes.
But
in that scene that you're referring to, like when he doesn't have his powers, that was one of the laugh out loud.
I laughed pretty hard at that moment. I was like, okay, maybe this movie does know what it's doing.
That's true. There were definitely moments like that where it's like, okay, I guess they know, but I don't know. If you know, then fix it. Don't.
I know. That's the conundrum, right? Is like I can't decide which way to fall on these items, because it's like, if you know, why wouldn't you fix it? Like, but then I don't know. Anyway,
when they're in the dome of stupidity or whatever you called it, they could have very easily had a scene where one of the berries was, the new young berry, dumb berry, other berry, is time traveling, and he looks over at original berry and he says, "Why do you look like a video game?" Or something like that. They could have band-aided a lot of the bad CGI through jokes like that, because I think that bit where he's running around without powers looking like a doofus, that is funny and it works. And and at the end of the day, I've read so much and we've heard so much about how the working conditions of CGI artists right now are just really bad, and it's hard to get things done on time, and they're underpaid, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's when you say, why don't you just fix it, it's like I want to think that maybe just like they can't. Like, we're in a situation, we gotta get the movie done, and that's what it is.
No, okay, you're right. I think maybe me saying fix it isn't the right way to say it. Just don't do it bad. Like,
yeah. I mean, the other thing too is that I would maybe agree with that, except that this movie's not an improv movie where they have it 90% edited and then they are still shooting. Like, they shot that film. There was a script when they knew that he looked weird when he ran, so they wrote a scene about it.
Right.
Like, it was like, you know what I mean?
Right.
It wasn't like that was just like a funny thing that he did on set one day. I mean. Maybe that was the case, but I doubt it. And again, if they're fixed for time and not a lot of, then why are you CGing actors that you have that are non-special effect shots? Why are you putting fake babies falling out of this building? Get real babies. Yeah, put real babies in my.
I think this movie might take the cake for best fake baby, though. It might dethrone. Hurt Locker.
I prefer these fake baby than American Sniper and Twilight.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was American Sniper. Yeah, you're right. I was thinking.
No. Yeah, it was the puppet
Renesmee. Chuck Esme.
Yeah.
I don't think you're ever going to dethrone Chuck Esme.
No,
probably.
Yeah.
But I think this is better than American Sniper for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. The one that's just clearly a toy that they bought from CVS.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else to say about this movie. Do you guys have any more talking points?
I have one or two small notes.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, well, we were talking about it earlier, but it's kind of interesting, especially with how you were saying, Chewie, well, just in general, the, DC, let's cram all the characters, get the team-up movie now before we're doing all of the individual movies and origin stories. This is weirdly an origin story for the Flash too, and I actually thought that's kind of, I wouldn't call it clever in any way that word means, but it was like, okay, we kind of got an origin story of the Flash in the first film that is the Flash, even though it feels like we've seen him forever now, and I'm tired of him, but now we're getting the first Flash movie. Yeah,
but it's also wait, we got to catch up to multiverse stuff too, so it's going to be that as equally as much as it is the Flash origin. And I've brought this up a lot recently, and it's the real world and the business of a studio affecting the writing. This is not what, in my mind, an origin Flash movie should be.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think what you were saying, or we were saying earlier, if it was just like, I like that they tried to do the Flashpoint because that's a well-regarded, storyline and stuff. But I do think that that groundwork wasn't laid properly for them to try to do something so overwhelming. I think it would have worked better if it was a smaller character story about the Flash going back in time, trying to change the past, and realizing that he can't. Right. And that kind of brings me to the next thing, is that this film thematically is all over the place. Like, I know it thinks it has a message, but it doesn't. It's constantly undermining its own message. And the message also doesn't even make sense in the greater... He literally changed the past in the last time we saw him. He saved the world by going back in time.
Yep.
Right.
And also, like, these points of this constant, Batman always has to die. What do you mean Batman always... He he doesn't die in your timeline. Why does he have to die? Like that, you literally you can't think of a way Batman doesn't die. He doesn't even exist. Like he's
right. Yeah, because when he goes back and it's George Clooney is
he's
not gonna get killed by General Zod.
Right.
So like, it doesn't make any sense. But then he does change the past anyway. Like, oh, you could only move tomato cans, but you can't save lives. Like, what? It's so stupid. It's just like.
Well, I mean,
to
be fair, the act of moving a tomato can is probably in most cases easier than the act of saving a life. Just,
I'm just saying that, like, also the idea of going back in time to save his mom, like, he gets the idea that, like, Batman says I can't interfere and interact with, but if I don't interact with them, but I just change, like, you're not that stupid, Barry. Come on. Like, obviously, if your action has ramifications, that's what he means. Like, what? Like, you're not that stupid. There's no way that he thinks that, like, if I don't talk to Truman, that's fine. But if I somehow manipulate the atom bomb to not go off without talking to him, it's okay. Like, what are you talking about, Barry? You moron? Of course it's going to change the future. And, like, I don't know. It's just frustratingly stupid time travel stuff.
Yeah, it's really stupid time travel stuff. Kind of like looking at what you're saying, and Matt, you too, like where I think it would have been an interesting idea to actually use this as an origin story, keep the framing as a time travel story, and so then it becomes like a unique perspective on the origin story, right? Where we see it through his eyes, right? That would have been really pretty cool.
Actually, yeah, that would have been cool. Yeah, get rid of all the other crap.
Exactly.
And that would have been a reinvention of an origin story. Like, the origins already happened, but now we're time traveling and we're interacting with that story in a different way we haven't seen. That could,
and they could even like play, because they could play on the knowledge of what we kind of collectively know about what happens to the Flash, and they kind of do that here a little bit. But I think, to your point, it would have been like if that was the focus of the movie. Oh, that would, and yeah, it would have been smaller scale, but I just feel like it would have been more grounded. Ideally, Barry would have been more likable. And it just would have been more fun. I mean, as much as some of those sequences, the opening sequence and some of the action was kind of fun, like when the Flashes are flying around the battlefield, there's a punchy punch kick can be fun. But I don't know. I think dial it back.
Yeah.
I know that we're never going to do that. That's not what this film was ever going to be, but.
Yeah. Well, also, just maybe a falls into the category of a question we shouldn't be asking is, so when Barry travels to the past, he interacts with a version of himself that was living at that time.
Yeah.
So in the infinitesimal number of times that he and young Barry travel into the past to refight Zod,
why are they not?
Would there not be millions of Flashes running around the battlefield all at once?
Are they just all in millions of timelines? I don't know.
But then why does he see himself in his own in that timeline?
I don't know.
The future changing the past doesn't make any sense. You have to do more than just say that and expect it to make sense.
Sean, they did do more. They give us a heaping bowl of spaghetti with some great
spaghetti looked good.
noises.
I'm not going to lie. I wanted spaghetti. I was hungry for spaghetti when that happened.
I did, you're right. But I never want spaghetti again now.
Well, that's too bad. I mean...
Also, he could phase. I know this is in the comics, and but I did not know that was something the Flash could do, and the way they introduced it was just like, what is happening? What? He could do that?
It seems like that would have been nice when he was fighting Zod, but anyway.
Or any number of times in other times. Wonder Woman also. Why was she like Wonder? Oh, sorry. Yeah, Wonder Woman is just like the cameo. Like she
shows up just long enough to finish playing her theme song, and then she's out.
Yeah, I'm sick of this Wonder Woman. I know that she works for a lot of people, but she has only ever worked for me in the Wonder Woman movie, the first one. She would work a lot better if they wouldn't just keep like abusing her. Like, I don't know how Gal Gadot feels about it, but they just, hey, we just need you for like
2 lines, and then you're out. Oh, I don't have a role in this movie? No. Sorry.
Also, like, they even talk about her in the alternate timeline?
Well,
I don't remember.
I think they
like,
just
why
ask,
don't they...
does Wonder Woman exist? No? Who's that?
But no one knows who Wonder Woman is at that time. That's what I'm saying. Why would he ask a person in that timeline if Wonder Woman exists when no one knew Wonder Woman existed back then?
It's fine because the main character is stupid.
I guess he is very stupid.
It's fine. He's stupid.
And then also this feels just like weirdly, I don't know, like a hole or something. Like, okay, so he's going back in time to save his mom, presumably because she was murdered by someone, and it never comes up that he's... Why doesn't he try to figure that out? I don't know.
Well, doesn't
that seem relevant?
That was a big question I asked too after I saw it. Like, why? Because she's stabbed. Like, she didn't stab herself.
She didn't like fall on the knife or something. Like, if they're making a point to go out of the way to say that it was a murder, that it wasn't his dad, to a point, actually at a certain point I was like, oh, I wonder if he's going to come back and find out that, like, oh, his dad did murder his mom. Like, that would have been mind-blowing and weird and dark and crazy, but it would have been something. But they don't do it. Like, why? He could go back in time. Why wouldn't he just see who killed his mom and do something instead of a tomato can, and Rube Goldberg device?
And the fact that they essentially prevent his father from going to the store to pick up tomato cans, right? So presumably, is his father at home? Like, does the murderer say, "Oh, there's a dad here. I guess I'm not gonna go"? Or maybe the mom was so upset about the lack of tomato cans, she just stabbed herself in the tummy.
Well, I was gonna say, like, before you get to the alternate, I was like, it would have been like, oh, the murderer kills both of them, and he goes into the alternate future, and both his parents are dead. That would be like,
yeah. I think the canon thing is that, like, Reverse Flash kills his mom or something like that, and it causes a causality loop or something. Anyway, the movie doesn't have any interest in telling that story.
Not that I want a Reverse Flash in this movie. So that,
which is the best name for a villain ever.
Yes.
Reverse Flash. Also, the purple dumb Flash was like so obvious. Like, as soon as you saw
it was
him,
very obvious.
That's gonna be.
Also, it is funny that he's like covered in all these little crags. Like,
like that's just every time he goes, he has to get stabbed with one of those crags. Like, dude, you don't have to do that every time.
Yeah, like, does he not pull them out? Like, or like, what is happening? Like,
yeah.
I
don't know. Those are my. I don't think I have any more notes.
No,
I think
that's about it. Oh, except for one of the most mysterious continuity errors in a movie. And Sean, I know you love continuity errors, but his left tooth is knocked out. But at the end of the film, his right tooth falls out. Like, I mean, if someone can confirm this, I did check it with other folks.
I had that thought, but it was a thought like, maybe I'm just misremembering, because they wouldn't obviously miss something so blatant. I must just be misremembering. But then you said that, I was like,
well, I saw it with a couple people, and one of them confirmed. They're like, yeah, it's the wrong tooth. So I need to see it again. I need to watch this whole movie again.
But that's what I mean. Like, how could that possibly be the case? There's no way that just... There's hundreds of people who have seen this movie at this point before it hits a theater, right? There's probably thousands. If they're CGing his whole face, they could CGI a tooth to make it match continuity. I get, like, what is happening?
No, it is quite perplexing. But I want our listeners to write in: are you team left tooth or right tooth? I need you to weigh in on the greatest controversy of our generation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's the Flash. Those are my notes. Chewy, would you recommend this movie?
No. No. God. No. I want to forget all of I want to forget this whole DC.
You want to go back in time and give yourself a tomato can so you don't go DC.
Murder Zack Snyder. You ruined all of this. You ruined everything. I just want to forget.
I mean, I guess it's the end, or this is kind of like the swan song, or the last hurrah of this.
We still have another
version.
Aquaman.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Aquaman and the Blue Beetle is supposed to be kind of the
Start of the
first
next...
in the new one. Right?
Sure. Okay, I guess. I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
They've broken me, and they've almost entirely broken me from comic book movies. I'm almost there. I mean, I'm already there with Star Wars. I mean, one day maybe I will get back into it. I was pretty into it for a while, but I don't know how much more I can do this, guys. I don't know.
You're coming to face that you just can't change things, that you just have to accept it.
I think about how much time they wasted, how many years with this Snyderverse, and all the potential, what we could have had, all the live action stuff we could have had with DC, and all the potential that is wasted, and just them just trying to catch up to what Marvel was doing, and just it.
You're an old man in a purple craggly suit.
I know. I'm not getting any younger. Are we ever gonna get? I mean, I'm just really sad.
Yeah. Well, I would also not recommend. I would say once it comes streaming for people who are even mildly throw it on once it's on Max or whatever. I'm sure it'll be pretty soon. I don't think it's worth the cost to go see it in the theaters. We were pretty harsh on it, and to its credit, it's not the worst of the DC. So if you've seen all the DC films and you were like, yeah, they're not great, but I kind of like them, then yeah, go see this. You might like it. You'll probably will like some parts of it. But yeah, it's definitely hard to recommend this film for anything on its own merit.
Yeah, I would say it's a recommend for me on streaming. Definitely not worth the money to see it in the theaters. I think there's just, for me, there was enough nuggets of just weird enjoyment, potentially unintentioned enjoyment, but and also I think partly because there were surprises. So if you're listening to this,
sure,
and these things sound appealing to you, well, they won't be because I've spoiled it already.
So I mean, this is another thing, and we've said this a million times, but even though Michael Keaton wasn't amazing in this, and I don't think he was oh great, it's that Batman again, and everything we talked about where it didn't even matter that it was moving, but how much would that have at least been something if they don't ruin it in the trailers?
Yeah.
What, imagine going to see this movie and not knowing Michael Keaton's gonna be in it. At least there would be that dopamine hit when that happens, and you'd be like, oh, that's and he's a character, and he's fighting. It's not just a
you gotta get butts in the seat somehow,
audiences
Sean.
Enjoy the thing that they're gonna actually see. It's so ridiculous how they have ruined just a movie in
everything,
in its form, in everything. Yeah,
just everything.
Yeah.
No, I could really only recommend this movie to people who were already going to see it anyway. If there was somebody who's grew up maybe reading Flash comics or whatever, knew about the Flash, I wouldn't say, and they were like, oh, there's a Flash movie? No, don't go see that. You're not gonna, that's not gonna be the movie that you think it is. It's gonna be a whole mess of just sloppy spaghetti. It's got all this baggage attached to it. It's got all these movies that you need to have seen. It's not the movie that you're looking for. If you're trying to get a Flash movie, it's a disservice to that concept. And
I mean, yeah, there's the animated Flash movies. There's the animated Flashpoint.
Yeah, I mean, really, just watch all the animated DC movies.
Those are pretty good.
How I don't understand how they could do DC so well animated and not write good live action movies. I don't get it. But whatever. Whatever.
Also, that dumb reporter. What was that stupid romance?
Oh God.
Oh, absolutely.
Sorry, I just
nothing.
thought of that. Just this completely tacked on. What? And never mind. Sorry to even bring it up, but just thought of that, and it was completely irrelevant and dumb.
Let me go lie down.
Don't lie down yet, Chewie.
Oh, right. Yes. Okay. So as we mentioned in the last episode or two, we are back on YouTube. The last 4 or 5 episodes that we recorded are on YouTube, and I'll be uploading some of our backlog that we fell really behind on. But it's for those of you who are listening on YouTube, thank you for coming back to YumChunks, and thank you for commenting. So now it is the listener mail segment, and we have chosen 2 comments to read for this episode. If yours did not get chosen, fret not. We might read it in the future. So please comment in, mail in at yumchunks@gmail.com with your thoughts on anything that we've said, or just your thoughts on any particular film. So with that, here are some comments that we got on our most recent episode, which was on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Spoilers for Spider-Verse stuff if you haven't seen that movie. This one is from Jesse Torres, who comments, "This would be either the best or worst idea for a final live-action Spider-Man film. Spider-Man versus the Sinister Six. But each member is from a different universe, and their goal is to wipe out every Spider-Man across the Spider-Verse, similar to the finale of the Spider-Man 1994 series. The only way to stop the Sinister Six would be 12 Spider-Men from across the Spider-Verse teaming up to stop them, and the 12 would be Tobey, Andrew, Tom, Miles, Peter B., Gwen, Noir, Penny, Ham, Paviter, Hobie, and Margot. We could finally get some of these characters in live action, but we could also see different art styles used for Tobey, Andrew, and Tom." Okay, what do you guys think about this idea?
I definitely feel like there's a good chance we're going to get some massive villain thing as like kind of the, if not like the main antagonist, because I think it's probably going to be Miguel in some ways. But I do think there could be an element where like all those villains that they had captured in, Spider Base or whatever get set free. And so there's like hundreds of villains that are roaming crazy. I could see a version of that. I don't know if I love Tobey, Andrew, Tom coming back, especially right after No Way Home, and we kind of got their cameos in this one. But it would be kind of interesting if there was like a live action or animated switcheroos on some of these characters.
Yeah, I mean we got the Lego Spider-Man timeline, and we got Donald Glover as Prowler, who was live action, and also we talked about in that last episode, but I love how just with all the different animation styles in this new Spider-Verse movie, they were able to just blatantly drop a live action character in there, and it didn't feel off. I can't think of.
Oh yeah. I didn't mention this in Chunkfire, but I did see Spider-Verse again after our recording and stuff. And man, does it hold up! It's awesome. There's so much. Let's just do another episode about Across the Spider-Verse.
All right.
We talked about it, but like the Paviter scene, like all that character, his whole intro, chai means tea. It's like you're saying tea, like all I don't know, just every moment, just like really. So good. Oh, we didn't even talk about this. We didn't talk about this.
Yeah.
So good.
Well, so Jesse, thanks for writing in. That's a fun idea, and I definitely think in the third Spider-Verse we're gonna see something big and crazy. I actually wouldn't be surprised if we see Tobey, Andrew, and or Tom show up in some way, even if it's just a little cameo. Sure. That wouldn't surprise me. I think if they're trying to claim that all Spider-Man ever in every medium and cartoon, live action are all connected, which they have, then I feel like on some level it's maybe even expected. So we'll see. Who knows? All right. Thank you for your comment. And next up, I'm sorry for the way that I will not pronounce your name correctly. This comment is from Zarabi Mizanin. Okay. And they write, "Firstly, hearing your voices again after so many years felt like a slap of nostalgia." A slap, I like that. It's like a slap. I found and originally subbed to the channel for Coracast when I was in high school. Then college and life happens, so I don't spend as much time on YouTube anymore unless the vids relate to my hyperfixations. It's why I clicked on this episode in the first place, because good lord, this movie is amazing. Not just visually, but also the story they're doing, because it works so well for the movie and in real life, since there's part of the fandom who will never accept Miles as Spider-Man. Also, Miguel being the one insisting that Miles is a mistake / not real Spider-Man is a nice touch, because I think Miguel's the only Spider-Man who wasn't bitten by a radioactive spider, has no spidey sense, he has retractable talons and spider fangs, and can paralyze people if he bites them. Personally, I feel like he's as much of an anomaly, if not more, than Miles. Also, I can totally understand what you guys mean about the cliffhanger ending for this movie, even though I thought it was Miles taking his time. Like, yeah, he's in shock that this was what another version of him turned into, but he's analyzing the situation. At least that's how I saw it. There was a shift in his expression when he's talking, pleading to 42 Miles, then the camera pans down to his hand, and you see his finger either testing or trying to charge up for a Venom strike. I'm thinking we might start movie 3 with Peter B's first lesson from movie 1. Don't watch the mouth, watch the hands. Anyway, I apologize for this extremely long comment. Between the hyperfixation and me hearing Chewie's voice after everything that has happened in the past few years, after reading all the GoFundMe updates, you guys just put me in a really good mood, made me feel like a kid again. Here's hoping Beyond doesn't get delayed and we get the epic conclusion we're expecting. Fingers crossed emoji, fingers crossed emoji, fingers crossed emoji. And that is that's what they wrote.
Yeah, I love that comment. I like the theories. I like the positivity. Also love the movie, and yeah, that's definitely my theory. I concur on Miguel. Like he also seems like he's the most non-Spider-Man of them all. And yeah, 100%.
I like that you brought up the real world connection of that there are people who will never accept Miles as Spider-Man. You know, and I mentioned at the beginning of this episode that I'm playing the Miles Morales video game, and I like how much of that is just people, you go around and you do good, and you stop muggings and you stop carjackings and stuff, and then, you know, people at most are like, yeah, you're pretty good for not the real Spider-Man. You know, like, yeah. There's this feeling that, like, you're, like, in the first game, you're Peter, and when you do something like, yeah, Spider-Man, yeah, thanks for saving me. In this game, they're like, well, all right, okay. I guess you're all right. Like, I just did the same thing. So